Hi, my name is Eric Jensen. I'm presenting today on how to be an ally, global researcher perspectives. So I'll just briefly introduce my background. I have a PhD in sociology from the University of Cambridge, and I'm working on a number of European research projects on the theme of responsible research and innovation, also called socially responsible science. So the institution that I'm working at is the International Consortium of Research Staff Associations, ICoRSA. And what I'm going to be presenting on is basically research findings that we've developed from a global study of researchers and innovators who were asked about different aspects of socially responsible science and innovation. So we asked about a whole range of factors. It was quite a long survey, and we got a lot of responses, as you can see here, from around the world. And what I'm going to be presenting on today is a selection of just kind of two parts of that data collection from the survey, and that's the parts that focused on gender equality and on the role of ethnic minorities. So we have two sets of questions. I'll introduce those specifically, and then basically you'll be able to see how people from different parts of the world view this question of how to be an ally in the sense of these are people who have been asked about what they're doing to contribute to gender equality and to integrating the role of ethnic minorities in their work. So first, the kind of overview quantitative perspective. I'm going to take this one at a time, first with gender equality and then with the role of ethnic minorities. So first on the question of gender equality, with this question, it was a level of agreement statement, which was, it is important to promote gender equality in my research and innovation work. And as you can see here, there was very strong agreement across different parts of the world. This way of dividing the world, by the way, comes from UNESCO, which is one of the partners on this project, which is called the RING project, Responsible Research and Innovation Networking Globally. And you can see more about the project at rring.eu. So here you can see that while there is some variation in the level of agreement with the statement that it is important to promote gender equality in my research and innovation work, for example, Latin America has a higher level of strong agreement with that statement. In general, there was very strong support for this. So the question is, okay, you say this is important and important to do it in your work specifically. So what are you doing? So what are the steps that you're taking to promote gender equality in your work? And we did the same thing with the question of ethnic minorities in research and innovation work. So here the question was, it is important to include ethnic minorities in my research and innovation work. And as you can see, again, there was widespread agreement with this statement, although you can see that the strength of agreement is less strong than it was for gender equality, and also the amount of people responding with a neutral answer was a lot higher. So this is kind of an issue, what that signals is that this is an issue that's not on people's radar to the same extent that gender equality is for researchers around the world. Okay, so getting into the main focus of my talk here, which is the open-ended responses. So after people were asked what their attitudes were, whether they agreed that these were priorities, again, there were other dimensions of social responsibility that we also asked about, but focusing on gender equality and the role of ethnic minorities in research work. So we analyzed this open-ended data using an approach called content analysis. And this is basically a way to systematically quantify open-ended responses. And that's because ultimately we wanted to be able to run statistical analyses, and we will be running multivariate statistical analyses to look at patterns. So what are the predictors of different kinds of responses, of different kinds of steps that people take to integrate social responsibility in their work around the world. So we did this with the kind of standard steps that are involved in a content analysis so that we could robustly quantify this open-ended data. And what I'd like to show you is what people said about the steps that they take. So first, the steps that they take to promote gender equality in their research and innovation work. So first, 18% of the responses for this open-ended question are analysts categorized as non-specific, vague, platitude, or virtue signaling responses. So these are responses that suggest that they promote or support gender equality, but without giving any specific steps. So when they're asked, for example, this is a real example. So when they had said, yes, I promote gender equality, it's important to promote gender equality in my research and innovation work, they were asked, how do you do that? And they said, yeah, working on promoting gender in my work. So this is not kind of adding any more specificity. It's a vague response. So there were a decent chunk of people gave this kind of response. So the biggest category of responses, though, which we then broke down into subcategories, was ways that people integrated gender equality into their research work within an academic environment or an academic related environment. So here there was a dividing line between general kinds of steps that they take in the research and innovation context in the academic environment and more specific steps. So 30% of the people out of that 81% in this category identified general things that they did, like my research topic has a gender element to it, for example. And then what I think is the most interesting set is the 51% out of that 81 that named specific steps that they take to ensure gender equality in their work. And here is an example. I have sought to promote gender equality in hiring office admin staff, encouraging and promoting fellow women colleagues' work in front of the higher management. So here's an overview of the different gender equality steps that people identified. So you can see that the most common was around fostering gender equality in the workforce. And then some of the other more common categories under this kind of specific steps area were things around gender as a substantive dimension of research and innovation work. So actually as part of their research, basically, as a focus of their research. Promotion or mentorship of female researchers, fostering gender equality in staff recruitment, promoting gender equality through delivering, attending training, and you can see it kind of goes down from there. So just going to go through these in the order we analyze them as opposed to the most prevalent categories. So one of the categories we found was supporting female researchers, publications, co-authorship, and academic citations. This was a way that they had that they identified as how they were an ally for this kind of thing. And so here's a specific example: maintaining a balance between women's and men's visibility in publications. Another category is integrating gender equality in research participant selection. So this is about selection processes and mechanisms such as representative samples. Fostering gender equality in research and innovation teams. So this is about having an equal balance of men and women in the research teams of the people responding. This was a very common category for how people integrate gender equality into their research and innovation work. Another is having it as a substantive dimension or focus of research and innovation content and practice. Another was promotion and mentorship of female researchers. For example, I encouraged a female colleague to undertake a PhD, and I will be on her supervisory panel in a mentoring role. Promoting women in decision-making roles and senior positions was a less prevalent kind of step that was mentioned. but it did come up. So drafted an unprecedented number of women to selection panels of scientific grant applications. That would be an example under this subcategory. Ensuring that gender equality in process of recruitment and selection of staff is taking place. So trying to reduce discrimination against women or make recruitment a fairer kind of thing. So this was one of the steps that people took. Another was involving training, either delivering or attending training. And then another was equality committees. So that was not a very common category, but it came up in 3% of these responses. Another was citing rules and regulations and legal obligations around gender equality. So again, not a very common category. And then there was a wide range of other factors that people mentioned, quite a diverse range of steps that they take. Just as one example, using gender neutral language in reports and in general in speech. So we did the same kind of analysis, the same kind of data collection and analysis on ethnic minorities in research work. So here people were asked, please list the steps you've taken to include ethnic minorities in your research and innovation work. So again, the first category was the kind of vague platitude or virtue signaling kind of response. So when they were asked about specific practical steps, then the response was just that this is my focus. And then under racial or ethnic equality in research and innovation within academic environments, which again is the largest category, but then we break it down into subcategories. So people who gave a general response on this, for example, I involved various ethnic minorities in a new European project. So this is not very specific about how exactly they were involved. So that's why it's in the general category. And then under the specific category, an example is identify gaps in areas where ethnic minorities are underrepresented in the organization, research and learn best practices on racial and ethnic equality. So here you can see the distribution of the different categories. So you can see that there are a range of different categories of steps that were taken, some of them focusing on participant selection, some on enhancing ethnic equality in the workforce, and other steps that can be taken. So the other kind, like as we go through these various steps that people reported taking, there's encouraging ethnic minority researchers to co-author papers. So encouragement around publications and co-authoring. And again, as in the case of the gender equality one, this is a pretty low prevalence category. Research participant selection was a pretty high percentage one. So a significant minority of the respondents highlighted participant selection and the importance of having a minority representatives in the sample when doing data collection. Came up a lot. Another was about the workforce, basically, so about racial or ethnic equality in research and innovation teams, ensuring that there's a good representation of a diversity of racial and ethnic backgrounds. Another was about the kind of focus of the actual research work itself, like for example, having xenophobia as a focus or indigenous people's needs as a focus in the actual research itself. And promotion and mentorship came up quite a bit. Again, the promotion into decision-making roles and senior positions was a pretty low prevalence category of steps that people highlighted. Ensuring racial or ethnic equality in the recruitment and selection process came up as something important. And then again, equality committees were pretty infrequent as a step. Following rules and regulations, not very common as a step that people are taking. And One thing that came up here that was not in the gender equality was the category of people downplaying the importance of ethnic diversity as a step. Often this took the form of a yes, but kind of response, like I agree it's important, but not at all costs. So these are steps that people are taking around the world in the context of trying to enhance gender equality and the integration of ethnic minorities into research and innovation work. So obviously this is just a taste of our findings. There's a lot more. So stay tuned at rring.eu to find out more about our findings in the Ring project.